Hello everybody and welcome to the 16th and final round of the 1993 season for the Australian Grand Prix here on F1 Challenge. We head to the fast, bumpy and unforgiving Adelaide street circuit, winding through Victoria Park and the city streets, notorious for its high-speed straights, tight chicanes and minimal runoff. If you missed the last episode at the Japanese Grand Prix, make sure to go and check that one out before watching this one, as a new champion was crowned at the Suzuka circuit. Going into the final round of the season, Alain Prost leads the standings by 14 points, ahead of his teammate Damon Hill, winning the championship last time out, thanks to a third straight mechanical retirement for the Briton. The two Benetton drivers complete the top four, although Patrese's fourth position is under immense pressure as he heads to his final race weekend of his Formula 1 career. As for us, we are 11th place with 8 points, just ahead of our main rival Johnny Herbert by a singular point. My teammate Philippe Alliot will be hoping that he can secure his second points finish of the year, after not scoring since the opening round at Kyalami. In the Constructors, Williams could get a possible 170 points for the season if they get a 1-2 finish. Benetton are clear of the chasing pack for second, but McLaren, Ferrari and Ligier are in an almost dead heat for third. Larousse are currently situated in 7th, 3 points off Jordan, but the main focus is Lotus into Adelaide, who we sit ahead of by 1 point. Our objectives going into this round are a top 12 start for the Grand Prix and a top 8 finish in the race. The vote is now closed for which team I will be driving for in 1994, and it will be announced at the end of the video, so stick around to see that. Now let's head into the news of the week. Hello and welcome to the Australian edition of the News of the Week. We start off with Lotus, where Alessandro Zanardi had a sizable crash during the qualifying session at Suzuka. While the 27-year-old avoided any damage to his head, he suffered moderate whiplash as well as a dislocated shoulder. The Italian sat out the Japanese Grand Prix and will also miss the Australian Grand Prix at Adelaide. In his place will be the Portuguese driver of Kyalami, who will make his debut with the team before the full-time move to the British team in 1994. Scuderia Italia and Minardi have accepted to merge their teams and assets for the 1994 season. This comes after the rising financial issues for both teams. The Scuderia Italia team were forced to withdraw from the Japanese Grand Prix, whilst Minardi have opted for pay drivers such as Jean-Marc Gounon to relieve their situation. This merge should allow the two teams to compete at a suitable level, to fight with other teams in seasons to come. The team has also announced that they will continue with Minardi's current engine supplier of Ford. Simtek also announced their partnership with Ford Power for the upcoming season in their debut year. The Ford Power plant has often been seen as a reliable and cheap option for new and cash-strapped teams, and that continues to be the case. The team announced one of their drivers to be 1989 British F3 champion and son of three-time world champion Jack Brabham, David Brabham. The 28-year-old has been a household name in junior categories, as well as driving the majority of the 1990 season for the Brabham F1 team with little success. His name brings great interest to the team, as well as a reasonable level of backing from sponsors, which is exactly what the team will need to begin their journey. They are still yet to confirm who will drive in the other seat, with an extensive list of candidates seen as potential suitors. Footwork announces its engine supplier, also going for the cost-effective option of Ford. The British-Japanese team will also go for an all-new driver lineup following the departures of Derek Warwick and Aguri Suzuki. Christian Fittipaldi will make the move from Minardi, with the returning Gianni Morbidelli alongside the Brazilian. The lineup should fetch a good blend of youth and experience with the exciting pairing, and they hope to push further up into the midfield following glimpses of a promising 1993 season. Pacific Grand Prix will use Ilmor engines for their new startup team. The engine choice seems to be a low-cost solution, being a 1992 spec of the power unit used by March in 1992. The team looks like it may struggle with an underpowered engine. The team also announced one of their drivers for 1994 being the young talented Scotsman of David Coulthard. The 23-year-old drove for the Pacific Racing Team in F3000 during the 1993 season, taking his car to third in the championship. Coulthard has also been in close relations with Williams, taking up a test and reserve role with the team in 1993 and will continue to do so in 1994. The Scot will be on a race-to-race contract with the team, with the option of being called back to Williams if necessary. That's all for the news of the week. Now it's time to head into qualifying. Hello everybody and welcome to qualifying day for the Australian Grand Prix. It's the season finale weekend and we'll be hoping to beat Lotus. That's the only real objective for us today. Make sure that we finish in 7th place in the Constructors. Adelaide, it's a track that I do like, but it's one of those high risk, high reward circuits where you really need to be all over the curbs, especially at that first chicane as we've just gone through. You really need to be attacking those curbs or you're just going to lose tons of lap time. As we now begin our first run, we're going to do 2 laps in this run over those curbs. You can see how much curb we do have to take onto 2 wheels there as we head through the first section, coming around the final corner now to complete our first banker lap. And it's going to be a 1:13.7 and that's going to put us into 11th place. We're going to push for another lap and we'll see how much I'm pushing. I'm pushing to the absolute limit on this second lap. All over the curbs, as you can see. Through the S section we're a minor fraction up, 3/1000ths through the first sector, and as we come into the second sector we get caught at the curb there and slam straight into the barriers. So maybe we were pushing a little bit too much there, and as such we decided to swap it down to 1 lap per run, because it's quite difficult to keep that concentration and that pace up for 2 laps in a row on such a qualifying pace. As we now begin the second lap, once again you've got to get all over those curbs or you're just going to lose so much time. Just under a 10th up through that first sector as we come now through the brewery corner. Mika Hakkinen had his life-threatening crash there in real life in 1995, so we know that if you get it wrong there will be dire consequences. As we now come to the second sector split, not quite as far up through that second sector, but it was a much cleaner final sector as I made a slight mistake into the hairpin the first time around, and it sees us improve by almost half a second, so a lot of that time was found in that last lap. As we now go into my final lap in the session and my last qualifying lap of the season. We made quite the meal of that last sector, and it's going to see us fail to improve, almost half a second down by the end of it. So it's 13th place for us, not a bad place to start, but hopefully we're ahead of the Lotus drivers. The 1993 Australian Grand Prix is up next, where hopefully we can hold on to 7th in the Constructors. Hello everybody and welcome to the 1993 Australian Grand Prix. It's the final race day of the year, and even though Alain Prost is a 4-time world champion, there's still no slowing down the Frenchman. He takes his 11th pole position of the season, just over 6 tenths ahead of his teammate Damon Hill. It's an all Benetton second row, with Michael Schumacher just getting the edge over Riccardo Patrese in the Italians' final ever race in Formula 1. Martin Brundle completes the top 5 just ahead of the Brazilian of Ayrton Senna. It's his last race for McLaren, and he'll be hoping to send off in a good fashion. Mika Hakkinen, his teammate, is up next in car number 7, with Jean Alesi completing the 4th row. Derek Warwick and Mark Blundell complete the top 10, with Berger, Herbert and Harrison completing the top 13. Philippe Alliot, my teammate, is up next, followed by Yuki Arvelator, who qualified 3,000ths behind my teammate. Rubens Barrichello in the Jordan is up next, completing row 8, with Aguri Suzuki and Eddie Irvine on row 9. Jean-Marc Gounon, for the first time this season, outqualifies teammate Christian Fittipaldi, with Carl Wendlinger in between them completing the top 20. Pedro Lamy, on his debut in the Lotus, is in 22nd, with the 2 Tyrrells of Andrea de Cesaris and Kelvin Burt completing those on the grid. There's 24 cars today. The Scuderia Italias, of course, withdrew from the Japanese Grand Prix and failed to show up for the Australian Grand Prix also. It's a 2-stop strategy today, stopping on lap 30 and lap 53, then to go to the end of an 81 lap race. It's one of the longest races on the calendar. I'll be hoping that we can seal 7th place in the Constructors. That is the main aim today, as we've got Johnny Herbert alongside us. We now await the lights. 24 drivers getting ready to set off for the final race of 1993. The lights are green, there's racing to be seen. We've got hit up the rear, as on the left there was one of the Ligiers stalling on the grid, side by side almost with Yuki Arvelato, as we head towards the first chicane. Down the inside as well goes Carl Wendlinger in the other Sauber, so we've lost a number of places as well to our teammate as we head in towards turn 4. That's one of the Benettons in the wall, who's causing a yellow flag just up ahead. He's rejoined up in 12th place as we get hit there by Yuki Arvelato, still battling with the Finn. As we head through the first sector, we get hit again under the Nissan bridge, and Yuki Arvelato does take that place, so we're down to 15th place, so we've lost 2 places off that start. We'll see what happened. It was Mark Blundell who stalled. This is obviously his final race before he moves over to Benetton. Apologies. As so not a good race for him. Obviously, stalling on the grid is never something that you want to do, and it was Arvelato that ran into the back of us. Fortunately, we've got no damage sustained from that. Riccardo Patrese on board. He gets one better than his teammate down towards turn 1, as does Ayrton Senna in the McLaren. So Michael Schumacher falls from 3rd to 5th on that race start, and Patrese is even challenging Damon Hill as they headed in towards the first of the 90-degree corners, but he clipped the inside wall and ran straight into the back of the wall. Well, he ran backwards into the wall and damages his rear wing. Fortunately, does not lose it for his own sake. He just damages it slightly, so he'll hopefully try to get that fixed somewhat. As here we see Yuki Arvelato just completely ran into the side of us and then again ran into the back of us. He does get that place, and I wonder if the stewards will have anything to say about the Finns driving there. Through the brewery corner for the first time. We've not got a great run. This will be our test on our straight line speed. It seems about equal between us and the Sauber, so maybe we'll be hoping to pull off a number of overtakes today. It is quite a difficult track to overtake on. Arguably just as difficult as Monaco, maybe a little bit easier because you got that long back straight into a hairpin. As Alain Prost leads the way from Hill, Senna, Schumacher, Brundle and Jean Alesi completes the top 6. On lap 2, we've got a great run through the first chicane. Maybe we could challenge Yuki Arvelato into the 90 right. Not quite close enough to make that sort of a move. Jordan as well are our direct competitors. They're just ahead of us in the Constructors. 3 points ahead, don't forget. So a good couple of points for us, and we could be up to 6th place in the Constructors. But right now, none of the teams that are fighting for that 6th or 7th place in the Constructors are scoring points. As down the inside of Yuki Arvelato we go, and that's an easy move, and us up into 14th position. That should be. Yes, it is. As next we can set our sights on Carl Wendlinger. He's 1.5 up the road, and he's just about holding on to the coattails of my teammate. He has caught up to my teammate slightly, as on the end of lap 5. we're just slowly maintaining the gap to the car in front. We're not really gaining, but we're not really losing time either. It's kind of fluctuating depending on what sort of lap we have. As that's Häkkinen out of the race, a gearbox problem so early on in this Grand Prix. And Mika Häkkinen, the young Finn, his season will come to a close on lap 6 of the Australian Grand Prix. He's the second retirement of this Grand Prix, obviously. Mark Blundell retired on the first lap thanks to stalling on the grid as there's a yellow flag up ahead. That's a car on the side of the road. That's one of the footworks. That has to be Derek Warwick off to the side of the road. And it is Derek Warwick. Suspension problems for the Briton. His final ever race as well in Formula 1. He's announced his retirement this season. And he was about to pass Mika Häkkinen's McLaren, who had that gearbox problem, until he also had a problem himself, was forced to pull over to the side of the road. And he is the third retirement of the Grand Prix. We'll now move up to 13th place in this race, as Carl Wendlinger still trying to get past my teammate Philippe Alliot, who in turn has caught up to, I believe that's one of the Ferraris in front of him. It might be, actually there's a number of cars in front, so we're kind of catching up to a train of cars, as we've got a great run through the brewery corner now, within 3/10 of the Austrian of Carl Wendlinger. Maybe we could send it up the inside, going in towards the hairpin. He defends that inside line for now, as Alain Prost sets the fastest lap of the race. He's got a 2-second lead ahead of his teammate. We couldn't make anything work there against Carl Wendlinger that time. We try the same trick again, slightly further away than we were last lap, but we'll see what we can do either way going into the hairpin. Maybe we can brake later. Defends that inside line. We brake later on the outside, brake too late, locking up the front tyre, and that's us failing to get the position. However, we do not have that bad of a run out the hairpin as such. We're now on the back of Carl Wendlinger, closer than we've ever been so far in this Grand Prix. Looking towards the inside of the final corner, that's a bit of a stupid move, and he also defends that inside line either way. Maybe we could set him up like how we did to Jyrki Arveleto. A great run through the first chicane could be the magical factor, and it does look like it could be once again us trying to get past a Sauber in towards turn 4 up the inside. He holds it round the outside unlike his teammate, and he keeps onto that position for now, trying to find a place to get through elsewhere. We couldn't find a way through, and now we're just falling back a little bit until that's Carl Wendlinger pulling off to the side of the road, or rather just stopping in the middle of the road, and he is out of the race. It seems like suspension problems for Carl Wendlinger, and it's been a rotten season for him. It's been 11 retirements so far. Well, not so far, it's 11 retirements this season out of 16. He's only finished 5 Grand Prix. Oh yeah, that's us into the wall heavily there, and into the wall again, and I think that might be our race over and done with. Like I said, it's high risk, high reward round this circuit, and you do have to push those extra limits, and over the curb too much, bottoming out over the curb, and that is going to be our race over and done with. That's our 4th retirement this season, and our 2nd crash of the year that's caused us to retire from a Grand Prix. As Ayrton Senna sets the fastest lap of the race and is starting to catch up to the 2 Williams in front, lap 16, and the leaders are now catching up to lap traffic. Prost still leads, but Damon Hill and Ayrton Senna are closing in on the Frenchman, especially so since Eddie Irvine is really giving Damon Hill such a hard time. Possibly Ayrton Senna could pounce on this opportunity to try and get up into 2nd place, but eventually the Jordan moves out of the way for Damon Hill. Johnny Herbert having a good race, running inside the top 10 until his engine gives up and he pulls over to the side of the road, and that's pretty much almost guaranteed us 7th place in the Constructors now, as the only Lotus remaining is the debutante of Pedro Lamy. That also puts my teammate Philippe Alliot, I believe, into the top 10 now. So he's in a decent position in this Grand Prix. Jean Alesi in for his first stop with an interesting line into the pits, it has to be said. He boxes on lap 19, so that possibly suggests that he is on a 3-stop strategy. There was Andrea de Cesaris also boxing on the same lap. It seems like one of the McLarens is going to be ready. Of course, that's going to be Ayrton Senna boxing shortly. Riccardo Patrese is going to be not quite close enough to getting past Jean Alesi. There is the French Sicilian driver, and he re-emerges ahead of the Benetton. Ayrton Senna pushing his way through lap traffic, and there's contact there between him and fellow Brazilian Christian Fittipaldi, and it seemed that Fittipaldi kind of just moved across his fellow countryman into the pits. At the end of lap 20 comes Ayrton Senna, and he is in from third position. He could also possibly be on a 3-stop strategy considering he's boxed so early on. And exiting the pit lane, we'll see who is in front of him. Down the pit lane now, and exiting the pit lane, Martin Brundle's ahead of him, and he is currently running in 4th place behind the Williams drivers and the Benetton of Michael Schumacher. There's contact there though between him and Jean-Marc Gounon, and also a hit of the wall there. Alain Prost also dealing with lap traffic. He's spun it, clipped the inside wall, and that might give the lead to Damon Hill. It does. Damon Hill takes the lead of the 1993 Australian Grand Prix, and Alain Prost will be sore to see that one go. But Damon Hill, a couple of laps later, into the box for his first stop of the Grand Prix, so that almost suggests that he is on a 2-stop strategy. Maybe a 3-stop if he just went for a longer first stint, but we'll have to wait and see. Alain Prost as such takes the lead of the Grand Prix, and he re-emerges in 3rd behind Schumacher and ahead of Martin Brundle. Michael Schumacher himself into the box on lap 27, just a couple of laps later after Damon Hill was. He'll be hoping for a good stop to try and keep him ahead of Ayrton Senna. Martin Brundle's also into the box there. He might get held up a little bit with the Briton coming into the pits, but it seems that Schumacher got away perfectly well. Here is Ayrton Senna coming down the main straight, and has he done enough to stay ahead of Michael Schumacher, or has the German overcut him? He has. Michael Schumacher up into 3rd place ahead of Ayrton Senna following their first round of pit stops. Martin Brundle once again dealing with lap traffic. It's quite congested down here, and there's contact between him and the Jordan, and that's Riccardo Patrese losing his front wing, and that's Kelvin Burt in the Tyrrell. Yes, as Andrea de Cesaris goes through in the other Tyrrell, so the 3 of them all losing their front wings and requiring an extra pit stop in this Grand Prix. Lap 30, and Ayrton Senna is all over the back of Michael Schumacher. Can he get through? No, he cannot. He hits the wall just like how Prost did, and he has had a half spin over the curb, and Martin Brundle has also been given a 10-second time penalty for that collision with Kelvin Burt, an unsafe rejoin for the Ligier driver. As Alain Prost on lap 31 boxes, he was quite considerably far in the lead ahead of his teammate Damon Hill, and as such remains in the lead of the Australian Grand Prix. There in the distance you can see in the background Damon Hill just coming down the main straight now across the finish line, and he is about 5 seconds behind his teammates. Kelvin Burt will be the next retirement of the Grand Prix. It's a brake failure for the Tyrrell, and he hits the wall on the inside of turn 3, and that will be his race over and done with. Hopefully that will not be his final race of his Formula 1 career, as he has shown promise in a couple of Grand Prix, filling in for Ukio Katayama. Lap 39, and Yuki Arvoleto is into the box. Philippe Alliot is in a direct fight with him, and of course Sauber are not that far behind in the constructors. I wouldn't say they're discounted just yet, but Yuki Arvoleto will need quite a result to fetch 7th place for Sauber. I believe he might need a podium at this point, which is going to be quite difficult to do unless there's a number of retirements ahead of him. Lap 48, and Alain Prost is in for his 2nd stop, so that's a very short 2nd stint of the race. He did overcut his teammate the first time round, but this time he's gone for the undercut, strangely enough. I'm surprised he's gone for such a interesting strategy here with such a short middle stint, but as such Damon Hill will take the lead of the Australian Grand Prix heading onto lap 49. Lap 51, and Damon Hill responds 2 laps later, and he is in for his 2nd stop of the Grand Prix. Alain Prost will quite briskly take that one back, and he is back up into the lead of this Grand Prix. It seems like it's going to be a battle between the 2 Williams drivers today, as Damon Hill trying to catch up to his teammate Alain Prost. He is slightly faster in this final section of the race, but that's an engine failure for Damon Hill, a fourth consecutive mechanical retirement. It took him out of championship contention, and it's also taken him out of contention for victory here today. Here's Alain Prost trying to get through on Jyrki Arveleto. He's gone wide and he's hit the barrier. A lap later, after Damon Hill had his engine failure, Alain Prost is also out. The two Williams drivers retiring within a single lap of each other, and that is absolute devastation for Williams. Obviously, it won't affect their position in the Constructors' Championship, but that's quite an embarrassing crash for Alain Prost, who signs off his final race of his Formula 1 career at the side of the road. Riccardo Patrese boxes and comes out comfortably in fourth place. Race leader Michael Schumacher, he inherited the lead from the two Williams drivers, but he is also out of the Grand Prix. A suspension failure with just over 10 laps remaining sees the young German out of the race and preventing any chance of him taking his second Grand Prix victory of the season. That means that Ayrton Senna in the McLaren is now going to take the race lead. He obviously hasn't scored a victory since the opening round in South Africa and hasn't scored a podium since the fourth round in San Marino. It's been an awful season for Ayrton Senna, but maybe this could be a good send-off for him in his final race for McLaren. Jean Alesi is running in second and Riccardo Patrese is in third, and that's how it would end. No more things to talk about in the Grand Prix. It was quite a boring end to the Grand Prix, but rounding the final corner for the final time, an unexpected victory for Ayrton Senna, signing off on his McLaren career. He wins the 1993 Australian Grand Prix. So then Ayrton Senna takes his second race victory of 1993. He wins 5.5 seconds ahead of Jean Alesi, and Riccardo Patrese completes the podium. A good recovery drive from the Italian following multiple incidents for him in his final Grand Prix of his Formula 1 career. Gerhard Berger, Martin Brundle with that 10-second penalty, and Jyrki Arveleto a lap down complete the points, with Rubens Barrichello just missing out. Philippe Alliot, Aguri Suzuki and Pedro Lamy complete the top 10, with Christian Fittipaldi, Eddie Irvine, Andrea de Cesaris and Jean-Marc Gounon, those completing the race order. 14 finished and 10 retired. Michael Schumacher, the latest of them all, with that suspension failure late on. He'll feel hard done by that retirement, but it does keep him in third in the championship nevertheless. The two Williams drivers, obviously the mechanical failure for Damon Hill, as well as the quite embarrassing crash for Alain Prost, taking him out the race. Kelvin Burt, Johnny Herbert, Jaden Harrison, that's myself, Carl Wendlinger, Mika Hakkinen, Derek Warwick and Mark Blundell were the other retirements from the Grand Prix. What does this mean then for the Drivers' Championship? It means that the top three remain as they were, with Alain Prost leading 84 points ahead of Damon Hill 70. A further 18 behind was Michael Schumacher, with Ayrton Senna getting his second victory of the season, pushing him up to fourth place once again in the drivers' standings, 5 points ahead of Riccardo Patrese. Another 5 points back was Gerhard Berger in the Ferrari, and Jean Alesi with a strong end to the season despite the multitude of retirements he had. He was just 1 point behind his Austrian teammate. Mark Blundell, a standout year for him, and he will happily move over to Benetton for next season. 22 points, that's 7 more than what his teammate Martin Brundle got. Mika Hakkinen with a decent stint in that McLaren following replacing the outgoing Michael Andretti. He had 2 podiums and a further points finish. Meanwhile for us, we essentially finished best of the rest in the championship. 11th place behind the top 5 teams is definitely a very strong season for us. 1 point ahead of Johnny Herbert, with the two Jordans on 6 points apiece. Then comes Jyrki Arveleto, Michael Andretti, Aguri Suzuki, who scored all of Footwork's points this season in one Grand Prix, thanks to that crazy Italian Grand Prix. Then comes Fittipaldi, Zanardi and Wendlinger completing the top 20. Philippe Alliot and Nicola Larini, who stepped in for one race at Ferrari, were the remaining drivers who scored points this season. Derek Warwick was very sore to miss out on championship points this season in his final Grand Prix season of his career. He had 2 7th places, as well as Andrea Montemini, who stepped in for Riccardo Patrese, had 1 7th place to his name. Then comes Fabrizio Barbazza, Ukyo Katayama, who had his season cut short thanks to that crash at Belgium, Andrea de Cesaris, Luca Badoa, Kelvin Burt, Emmanuel Naspetti, Pedro Lamy, who made his debut today at Australia, Michele Alboreto, Jean-Marc Gounon, Ivan Capelli and Eric Comas was last and 35th in the Drivers' Championship. The Constructors sees Williams win once again. 154 points tally is a very decent amount to finish the season on, quite a way ahead of Benetton is second on 82, followed by McLaren, who just about got the edge over Ferrari for third. 2 points was the distance in the end between the two teams. Ligier kind of fell off in the last couple of races, and as such they finished down in 5th, then quite a drop down towards Jordan on 12 points in 6th, with Larousse, Lotus, Sauber all close in that battle for 7th place. Footwork and Minardi were the other teams to score with 3 points apiece, with Tyrrell and Scuderia Italia the teams unable to score throughout the season. I'm quite a sucker for statistics, so here's a picture of both the Drivers' and Constructors' Championship pause if you want to have a look at the results of them. And thank you ever so much for watching the 1993 Australian Grand Prix and the 1993 season as a whole. The support for this series has been immense, and I cannot wait to bring you the 1994 season. Make sure to like and subscribe so you can keep up to date for when the new season begins. And now we're going to look at where I have moved to for 1994. That's going to be all from me in today's video, and goodbye. Sauber announced their second driver for 1994 to drive alongside Carl Wendlinger. Young Briton Jaden Harrison joins from the Larousse team after a very promising debut season at the French outfit. We got a few words in with Harrison to see how he feels about the move.
Yeah, it just felt a little bit weird joining the team that you've been directly competing against for the full season, but Sauber have made it very easy for me to integrate with the team okay. We've been running a 1994 spec of the 93 car. Gotta say, the car does feel quite twitchy, but I'm sure I'll get used to it with this new Mercedes power unit as well. Looking strong, and I'm hoping for a good season.
In other news, Mark Blundell has been getting to grips with the new Benetton B194.